think we need one more commissioner to meet quorum. We'll go ahead and call the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Commission to order for the November 3rd, 2021. Because the meetings are currently being held remotely, options for comment include comments may be emailed to publiccomments@shra.org, and they will be read into the record during the meeting. Comments may also be made by phone by dialing 888-970-1444. To comment during the citizens' comments agenda item, please call after roll call. And to comment on a specific item, please call at the beginning of that agenda item. We request that all commissioners and staff and participants keep their microphones muted unless they are speaking. Due to using Zoom, we'll be asking for comments and looking for raised hands both electronically and physically. With that, we'll move to roll call. Larry, go ahead. Please unmute.
Manfor,
Here.
Boyd, Morgan,
Here.
Nunley,
Here.
Osmany, Ross, Schumacher Hodge, Sajabu,
Here.
Starks, Wu, Commissioner Wu. I see a raised hand. I just want to make sure that someone else didn't enter that. Commissioner Boyd, he raised his hand as well. So I'll mark him present. And with that, we have a quorum.
Thank you much. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing nobody jumping up and down or raising their hand, the agenda is approved as said. Citizens' comments, anyone interested to submit public comments, please email to publiccomments@shra.org or call in at 888-970-1444. Could you please read the paragraph?
Sure. While the Commission welcomes and encourages participation in the Commission meetings, please limit your comments to 3 minutes so that everyone may be heard. SHRA provides opportunities for the public to address the Commission at this time in order to listen to opinions regarding non-agendized matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of SHRA. Consistent with the Brown Act, the public comment periods on the agenda are not intended to be question and answer periods or conversations with Commission members. Members of the public with questions are encouraged to contact staff before or after the meeting. Members of the public wishing to provide comments should either email comments to publiccomments@shra.org or present them verbally by calling 888-970-1444.
All right, do you have any public comment there?
Not at this time.
Okay. That will take us on to the approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes from the last meeting? Seeing nobody jumping up and down, the minutes are approved as submitted. We have one item on consent, AB 361, Brown Act, remote meetings during state emergency. I'll take a motion on that.
So moved.
Chair, do we have input first on this agenda item?
It is on consent. If you would like to comment on it, you may.
Thank you much. Actually, I would. My comment is asking, instead of a definitive end date of November 31st, can we find legalese wording to keep this open-ended, or is the Commission comfortable doing this every 30 days?
I will defer to our attorney.
This is Brad Nakano, General Counsel. Pardon me if I could just jump in. The Brown Act states that these exemptions that are adopted by the governing boards can last no longer than 30 days. So they must be revisited every 30 days in order to continue them. So that's why we had seen it on the October agenda, and that's why it is again getting presented here in November. To make a long story short, Commissioner Boyd, by law, we cannot make it longer than 30 days.
And there you have it. Thank you, Greg.
Okay,
You're welcome.
we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Amanfor,
Aye.
Boyd,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Osmany, Nunley,
Aye.
Sujabu,
Aye.
Starks, Wu,
Aye.
motion carries.
All right, thank you. That takes us to presentations. We have two of them. The first one is the Housing Trust Fund Fee Update Workshop County item.
Good afternoon, Commission. I think this is the first time in my 30+ years here at SHRA I could say good afternoon to the Commission. It's Christine Weichert from Development Finance. Very excited to bring this presentation to you today. SHRA has administered the Housing Trust Fund on behalf of the County of Sacramento since about 1990. And for the first time in almost all that period, we've done a study working with our partners, the county, who actually, it is their ordinance that creates the Housing Trust Fund. SHRA administers it, but they create it. And I think it's the first time in almost all that time that we've talked about maybe increasing this fee. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm here to introduce Leanne Mueller from the County of Sacramento, who will be doing the presentation. But after her presentation, if you have any questions about our administering of the funds, or we do bring an annual report to you that discusses the fee usage, but I know some of the commissioners are new, so they might have questions about what we use the funds for. But primarily we use the funds for the gap financing for construction and rehabilitation of affordable housing developments. So when you see us bringing a project forward to you in the County of Sacramento and we're providing a loan, chances are these funds are in part of that loan agreement. So with that, let me just go ahead and introduce Leanne, and she has a PowerPoint, and she does a great job with it. I've seen it a couple times, but Leanne, I'll just introduce it you now.
Thanks, Christine.
Okay.
I'm Leanne Mueller. I'm a senior planner with Sacramento County, and I am the project manager for updating the Housing Trust Fund. I have a quick procedural question. Do I need to present the PowerPoint, or will you be presenting it for me? I got the answer. Thank you so much.
Using the slides quickly enough, Leanne.
Yes. So what we have here is the Housing Trust Fund, which is the county's non-residential. It's the fee that we charge on commercial projects to fund affordable housing in the unincorporated portion of Sacramento County. So I think we all recognize that there is a need for affordable housing in the region. The current standard of housing affordability indicates that households spending 30% or more of their gross income on housing are considered cost burdened, and severe overpayment occurs when households spending 50% or more of their gross income on housing. The impact of high housing costs disproportionately affects extremely low, very low, and low income households. So based on these standards, market rate housing is generally not affordable for households under 80% of the median income. 73% of renters and 60% of homeowners earning under 80% of the median income are overpaying for housing. And within Sacramento County, under our Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA, we have to provide 11,000 units that are in the very low, extremely low, and moderate range. And the other thing to be aware of is that this is the fee for affordable housing that is related to non-residential construction. So this is where you're getting warehouses, commercial, retail, and offices. The idea behind this is, as Christine was saying, it provides the gap financing to create affordable housing. This fee was originally established in 1990, and the last time it was established was actually updated was in 1992. So that is a very long time. And then we did commit to reassess the fee as an implementation action for the analysis of impediments to fair housing, which was submitted to HUD. And it was also identified as a priority by the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates how the Housing Trust Fund fee works. So essentially, it is a one-time fee that is paid at building. It applies to the development of new non-residential buildings in the unincorporated county. The funds are deposited into a housing trust fund, which is managed by SHRA. And to date, 3,000 affordable units have been assisted in their development. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we wanted to point out is that Sacramento County is not alone in having this fee. There's approximately 50 similar programs in California. They tend to be more of the Sacramento region, the Bay Area, and coastal counties and cities. Within Sacramento County, there are 5 cities that have similar fees: Sacramento, Elk Grove, Rancho Cordova, Citrus Heights, and Folsom. Next slide, please. So this is currently what we charge based on a square footage basis. So office is the highest at 97 cents per square foot, and warehouse is the lowest at 26 cents per square foot. Again, this is non-residential construction, and they were last updated in 1992. So essentially the fees have been flat for approximately 29 years. So the thought is that we are potentially missing out on a lot of funding for affordable housing. Next slide, please. So in order to support the fee update, the county contracted with Kaiser Marston Associates to prepare 2 studies. One was the Housing Trust Fund fee analysis, which addresses the legal requirements, and it establishes the maximum fees that could potentially be charged. The second is the analysis, context, and recommendation. It provides the information which supports the selection of the updated fee levels. It provides us with a market context, the fees as a % of the development costs, other affordable housing fee programs in the Sacramento area, and then a comparison of the total fees to those other jurisdictions. And then it also provided us with an illustration of the fee if it had been escalated for costs for the past 29 years. Next slide, please. So this is what we are really getting to with the Nexus study. It establishes the maximum fee levels, and it's the legal requirements to implement and impact fee. Next slide, please. So this is the concept behind the non-residential or the commercial nexus. So basically, new workplace buildings mean new jobs, a share of which are lower paying. Then you end up with new lower income households for those jobs, and then there is then a new demand for affordable housing. So the Nexus study is those maximum fees based on the cost to provide needed affordable units to workers. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to go over, I think you guys are fundamentally aware of affordability gap, but it is the difference between the cost of developing those affordable units and the unit's value based on the restricted affordable rent. So before we could call it the very low income fund. And so it was basically targeted at up to 50% of AMI. But as part of the Nexus study, we've also included low income, which would be 50 to 80% of AMI. Next slide, please. So this is the maximum fee findings that could be supported. And those findings are the ceiling on the potential fees. The fees are typically set well below the Nexus maximums based on other considerations. So as you can see, the maximum that could be charged for warehouse is $16.40, and office would be $47.60. Next slide, please. So we wanted to illustrate some of the development in Sacramento County for the fees for the categories for which we collect the trust fund fees. So as you can see, the orange line is retail, but one of the largest ones is warehouse, which is the blue. And that has been the largest category for non-residential development in the most recent years. In the past couple of years, we've had nearly 5 million square feet under construction. But conversely, I think you would have noticed that warehouse is also one of the categories that we're charging the least for. Next slide, please. So what this shows is essentially the typical representative projects that were looked at. So as you can see, the kind of the square footage, the floor area ratio, and the typical land that's associated with them. Next slide, please. These are illustrating basically the cost to create different types of the fee categories. So for example, warehouse and distribution in Sacramento County, it costs approximately 125 to 155 square feet. Dollars per square foot, excuse me. And then you can see what percentage of that is the land cost, the construction, the indirect costs like financing, other government fees, and then the housing fee. One of the points we want to illustrate as part of this is that the housing fee is a very small percentage of the fees that are collected and the total cost to develop these types of developments. Next slide, please. So again, this also provides the fee levels as a percentage of the development costs. So you can see that the green is up to 1%, the yellow is 1 to 2%, the lighter green is 2 to 3, and over 3% is the gray. So on the far right-hand side, that's the percentage of those fees that our current fee is, and then you can get an idea as if we went up in cost, what percentage of that total development cost they would be. Next slide, please. So this is how the fees compare to other jurisdictions that we looked at in the region. So for example, for warehouse, we are in some cases a little bit higher, but fairly comparable to other regions. And for the city of Sacramento and Elk Grove, our housing fee is actually less. Next slide, please. This shows a similar comparison for retail. So for example, the county is between $32 in Arden, $40 in Antelope, and you can see how we compare to the city of Sacramento, Rancho Cordova, Elk Grove, West Sacramento, and Placer County. Next slide, please. This is the same, except we're looking at office, basically how the county compares for office development to other jurisdictions in the region. Next slide, please. Again, same for hotel. Most of our hotels are actually in Metro Air Park, so that's where we took this from. And then you can see the hotel development in other jurisdictions. Next slide, please. So what we wanted to show with this slide is how the county of Sacramento compares on a square footage basis, dollars per square footage, just for the housing trust fund fee with the other jurisdictions. So you can see how we compare with the city of Sacramento, city of Folsom, Elk Grove, and then Placer County. We should note that Rancho Cordova and Citrus Heights are the same as Sacramento County because they kept their fee the same when they incorporated. But I have had conversations with staff from the city of Citrus Heights, and they are actually looking at updating their fee as well. So I would anticipate that Citrus Heights will increase in the not so distant future. Next slide, please. So this is an illustration if those fees were indexed since 1992. So as you can see that for warehouse, which is our lowest, it would be 64 cents. And office, which is our highest, would be $2.39. Next slide, please. So this is our consultant's recommendation. They recommended that for warehouse and industrial, we could comfortably charge up to $2 per square foot, all other non-residential up to $3 per square foot. So that would be like office, hotel, and retail. And then they also recommended that we add an annual index, so to allow the fee to keep pace with increase in costs. So this would be very similar to what we do on our affordable housing ordinance. That one is actually indexed. Next slide, please. So this is the county staff in coordination with SHRA. This is our recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. We're recommending warehouse at 70 cents a square foot, manufacturing at $1, commercial and research and development at $2, and hotel and office at $3. We're also wanting to add an annual index so that we can annually index this fee so that it keeps pace with increase in cost. Next slide, please. That is the end of my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions from commissioners? I see Cecile, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. I thought it was very well done, and it covers a large area. And I know this was quite a bit of work for everyone involved. I did have a couple of questions because on some of the items, whether it was the report or sometimes in going through some of the items, if I were to look on, I'm not sure what page it is, the Nexus Study maximum fee findings. So it's this page. And there's several categories here. You have office, medical, retail, commercial, hotel, industrial, R&D, warehouse, residential care. However, when all of those categories get translated and get over to the recommendations, all of a sudden it shrinks to only 6.
It does.
And so that was a little confusing for me to go from one to the other. And where does this one fit? Where does that one fit? So
right. So what we had done initially when we were scoping the Housing Trust Fund study is we were looking to see if there were other like non-residential commercial categories that we could also charge fees to. Because as you look, it's like 6 categories. So we were like, are there any other fees that have opened up since 1990 that we could realistically charge? And what we found after talking with our consultant and after talking with our building department is that realistically, like residential care, it's either going to end up being charged at, it's either going to end up being a residential use, which would not be charged, or it's probably going to get into more of a commercial or office use, which is already covered, because building looks at them slightly differently. They have different occupancy types. So what we found is that even though they had been explored initially, it didn't make sense to expand out into those categories. So we left ourselves with the original 6.
okay, and so some of these are just combined, like the residential, I guess is going into commercial, is that right? Or
generally what happens is it either if it's small enough, it stays in residential and doesn't get charged through this particular fee, or it will potentially depending on how it lays out, the building department will either put it generally in a commercial or an office, or I mean, an office type use, or yeah, generally office. I'm sorry if I'm confusing you, but generally office. So we felt that it was that these were already largely covered by the existing types, and we didn't feel the need to create confusion by trying to expand them out.
Okay, so, and that's the same thing with medical. Medical probably goes into office or something like
Yes,
that.
it does.
And then I guess that last one was industrial manufacturing. That goes into retail commercial too.
Well, and we have a manufacturing type, and so it should stick within that. I think generally we were finding that you're either going to be in a warehouse when you get into like that type of use. You're either going to be a warehouse or you're going to end up being in like a manufacturing.
Okay, and then I see under staff recommendations, there were 3 different recommendations, right?
Mhm.
Adopt the amended ordinance with the fees from table 2, add an index, which I think is great, so that way nobody gets surprises, because I can only imagine for the developers, this will be something that is, I don't know if I want to say surprising, but something that they're not going to be necessarily happy with, and it affects their planning, I guess I should say.
Yes, yes.
And then the third one was expand the income levels funded by the ordinance. And it said extremely low, very low, and low.
Mhm.
Have those levels not been in there before? I thought they were already there, or was that just my misunderstanding?
My understanding of is that originally the index was called a very low income. So we were targeting that particular income group. What we did as part of the Nexus study was we looked specifically at low income as well. So, and then we have language in there for low income at 80% or less. So it is somewhat of an expansion of the income groups that we would anticipate being served by this ordinance. We're
Okay,
trying to really target that workforce housing.
okay.
And we felt an expansion would accomplish that.
And from what I understood, if I'm not mistaken, you held focus groups so that you invited the public and members of the building community and so on and so forth to come in and give their various inputs.
Yes.
And I'm sure they would say, just leave the fees where they are. However, there were other groups that also came in and said, this is a true need. So I am wondering, and I have to put the question out there, the recommendations from the consultant were the $2 and then the $3. However, staff, you guys have suggested something a little different, in particular with warehouse, at 70 cents and manufacturing at $1. Can you give more of the reasons why staff is recommending that? Because I think a lot of our constituencies, it would be irresponsible if we didn't at least ask why.
Right. So the thought process that we went through is we looked at obviously the maximum that the Nexus study would support, which is not realistic. And then we looked at what would happen if the fees had been indexed. And then we also looked at the surrounding jurisdictions. So what we tried to do is take those 3 items into consideration. And obviously we tried to keep them in the range of the other jurisdictions, but also the indexing.
Okay. Following up on that, and I know the other industries, because in your slide, you also talked about the amount of the fees relative to the total building costs. And I believe I read somewhere that this modest of an increase is going to be a very small increase to their overall building costs, to the point where it may not make very much of a change in anyone's decision-making, because it's such a small part, if I read that correctly, of the total building costs.
It is a small portion. I think what we calculated is with the fees, with the increases, it would be like maybe a 2 to 5%. So it still would be a small portion, but as we heard when we had the focus group meetings with the commercial developers, I think any increase in fees even if it's a small percentage of that total fee stack, is an area of concern for them. So they are concerned about any increase to their total fee stack, even if it is a small percentage. So that was one of the items that we certainly heard from them.
Okay, and I could understand hearing that from them. I'm not saying that, they're saying we don't want to pay an extra dollar. I get that. It's such a small portion of their overall building costs.
Mhm.
And I guess I'm still a little unclear as to why we didn't go with the recommendation, because it still seems like it's not going to be that big of a jump. And, in particular, manufacturing and warehouse are the two that are staying much lower. Whereas they said they said warehouse and industrial, which I assume is manufacturing, should go up to $2, and then all the others should go to $3, whether it's research and development and commercial. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, commercial was the one area where there's, if I'm saying this right, there would be a lot of employees who would be very low income. So the commercial would be the one with retail, as I understood it, that really impacts the need for low income housing. So why would we still keep that one at the $2 when they have the biggest impact for the needs?
Right.
Leanne, maybe I could help.
Sure.
And I think you are the appropriate one to answer this, but when I looked at this, Commissioner, I also looked at, I think the county also pegged the recommended amounts based on the index, if the fee had been indexed from 1990. So they did take the consultant's recommendation into account, but then they also looked at what the fee would be today if it was indexed. And I noticed what they had finally landed on was fairly close to the index numbers so if it had been increasing at a certain cost of living amount, over the time, that's close to what they landed on. Leanne, is that right? I just wanted
Yeah, that's correct. If you look at table 1 of the staff report, we had indicated the fee if it was indexed for cost increases. And then in table 2, when you look at that fee, you can see that they're definitely never less than the fees I think except maybe, no. Yeah, they are never less than what was called for indexing. They're slightly above what was called for indexing.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta find that one. I'm sorry. It's
That's
kind of
okay.
a lot of tables.
There's a lot of tables and there's a lot of pages. But essentially,
if it was indexed, okay, yeah.
yes. So in the report that was provided to you, table 1 indicates index for cost, and then table 2 indicates what was recommended by the county.
Okay, so the office and hotel, you're going with consultant's recommendation of the $3, even though indexed, it would have been a little bit lower, not much,
Yes.
a little bit lower.
A little bit lower.
And then R&D, you're going, it indexed, it would have been $2.02, which is basically even.
Which is basically even.
However, the consultant would have recommended $3. Do I have that right?
Yeah, all other non-residential, they would have recommended $3. And so we chose not to go quite that high.
Okay. Wait a minute. On manufacturing, you did go down. Do I have that right? Manufacturing index, it would have been $1.50.
$1.51.
That is the only one, Commissioner, that you are correct. Now I wish I'd provided this to all of you, but I made this for myself this morning because like you, we kept flipping back and forth. And yeah, the only one that's not high, this recommendation that's not higher than indexed is the manufacturing. It's I think index would have been $1.51 and the recommendation is $1. And I assume, Leanne, is that because is the county, I mean, wants to encourage manufacturing too? I'm sure there's other reasons that I'm not sure aware of besides the index.
We do want to encourage manufacturing, and we're also thinking that potentially an area where uses could go is we're going to, in the future, be working on some of our ag tourism type uses and some, winery type ordinances. And we're thinking that we could potentially get quite a bit of revenue in the manufacturing category with those. But the concern is that if it's too high, it'll probably just encourage us to encourage certain people to go out with illegal activities, and then we'll spend more time doing code enforcement and various things along those lines than we will get people in paying their proper building permits for those uses. So it's a little bit of an incentivization, honestly, to see if we can get more people into compliance for certain types of uses that we think are going to come in the future.
Okay, and then one last question then, now that I have those two and I'm comparing them, it's also on the warehouse. So if it was indexed, it would have been 64 cents.
Right.
Staff is recommending 70 cents, which is, pretty close.
Right.
Why not to the $2?
I think the concern with warehousing is that is an area where we have seen a lot of growth, and we feel that we'll continue to see a lot of growth. And we were concerned if we went too high, then potentially there might be an incentive for developers to go to other jurisdictions, and then we would lose out on those potential funds altogether. Because as part of our overall fee package, we tend to be a little bit on the high side with warehousing as a whole. So we were trying to be a little bit cautious with warehousing and the fee increase there.
And you say that's because of the other jurisdictions were more competitive.
Yes.
Okay, I'll stop now. I'll let someone else have their questions. Thank you so much for answering my questions. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. No problem.
You're on mute, Gail.
Thank you. Barry, you're muted also, but you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening I just lost her, Miss Mueller. Sorry, my screen kind of floated just away. I do have a couple of questions for you, following up, or I should say echoing Commissioner Nunley. Noonley, excuse me, her line of questioning, not line of questioning, but some of the questions she had. To your reply to Commissioner Nunley's question in regards to manufacturing fee, as you stated, make sure I heard you right, it is being lowered or sustaining where it is?
So manufacturing the existing fee is 61 cents per square foot. That's the existing fee that we're charging. The index for cost fee would be $1.51. And then I believe that the KMA recommendation was up to $2 per square foot. So we decided that we would obviously increase it over what it currently is, but stay at around the dollar range, just because we felt that that was an appropriate number for kind of this area, and then what we would anticipate to see based on the surrounding area, and then what we think is going to be coming in as far as future development in the unincorporated portion of the county.
Right. Let me ask, so right around the dollar-ish, so that means 98 cents, $1.02,
$1.
at $1.
We're
so
we're
at
a
$1.
dollar.
Okay, and with that, and so as you said, based upon the surrounding areas, so the other municipalities around our area, that fee is sitting at pretty much at $1, plus or minus 5%, correct? So that's what you're basing it on.
I believe you are correct.
Okay, and then going past that, or going on from that, of course, as you just restated, the county is looking forward for future endeavors with whom manufacturers coming in and thereby generating the same amount of revenue, if not greater revenue, at the dollar fee versus raising it to the advised $2+ fee.
Mhm.
And I understand that aspect of it. What you also stated was that if the fee is looked upon by the manufacturing, those in manufacturing that may want to come to Sacramento as too high, it would lead to illegal activity. If you would expound, excuse me, a little more on what industry, or excuse me, what specifically are you speaking of that may lead to illegal activity in manufacturing, illegal actions caused by those manufacturers not wanting to pay a higher fee?
And I think where we're getting at is we're getting more into the like agricultural uses that are out in the ag zone. They're not necessarily, they're a little bit of a hybrid where, and those uses also tend to fly under the radar a little bit. So I think that's what we are trying to incentivize to get in. And I think also part of it is that we are anticipating, as a new work program for the county, is working on some of the agritourism type uses and some things as they relate to kind of wineries, breweries, that type of thing. And so part of it is kind of looking forward to the future and anticipating what we think will be a revenue source for us, and trying to come up with what we think is reasonable, also based on a future revenue source.
Got you on that. To your answer,
Mhm.
only because I'm totally unaware how it could happen. But as you stated, in the ag aspect is the thinking, how do you have an illegal winery? I mean, is that something that is in place now? That I'm just curious. You need a lot of room, and so there is an illegal winery aspect.
I was giving it as an example of an ordinance that we're going to be coming through with, but we do have uses that tend to in some cases fly under the radar. We have had facilities like horse facilities where they had large events and they were putting on shows and having food that were not operating appropriately. And in some cases, when you're dealing with agricultural uses, there is a very fine division between, what is something that is ag processing versus what is something that falls under manufacturing. And so those are some of the categories where we are hoping that if we put the manufacturing use at $1, then we'll get, once we come up and craft our future ordinances and work on that we'll be able to capture that.
Thank you for your answer there. In closing, I believe you stated as well that the warehouse fee is also being kept low in anticipation for those who wish to bring in their warehousing business. Excuse me, business. And as you stated, let me stop from which, let me back that up a little bit.
Okay.
What I'm looking at and what I'm hearing, solely based upon the knowledge I have and totally my opinion, the agricultural aspect in the warehousing business, it sounds like it's a leniency going toward the cannabis business in anticipation for the opening up of the cannabis business countywide, and not wanting to shun big business who are 95% of the cannabis business California-wide, nationwide as well. Again, I'm just stating my opinion, but that's what it jumps out to me in regards to, we're going to take it easy for, again, the cannabis industry that is currently 90 to 95% controlled and financially backed by big corporate business. Again, that's what it looks like to me. I could be way off the mark, but that is why I asked. But
Right.
thank you, Ms. Mueller. I appreciate your help.
I will answer that when we were discussing it, that honestly did not enter into the conversation, but I could see how you could get there with that, but at least it wasn't part of my thought process. So I will tell you
Okay.
that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your answers.
All right, thank you, Barry. We'll move to Commissioner Nunley. Go ahead, Cecile, you're up and you're muted.
I'm muted, okay. You said on the industrial manufacturing,
Mhm.
you kept it at $1,
Right.
somewhat in response to the surrounding areas. And then I'm looking at, and maybe it's more with counties, because I'm looking at this page here. I don't know what page number it is. And it said, City of Sacramento is charging $1.73,
Mhm.
Folsom $1.70,
Right.
Placer County $2. The only one that's less than $1 is Elk Grove. Everybody else is closer to the $2 anyway.
Mhm.
So why are we only going to the $1? Why not even $1.50? That would still make us lower than everybody else except for Elk Grove.
Okay. I mean, I'm not opposed to considering that. I mean, we're here for a workshop. We're here to hear your opinions. If the commission consistently feels that $1 for manufacturing is too low, staff can consider that and take that to the Board of Supervisors, because they will ultimately be adopting it. So if that's a consistent thought of the commission, staff would entertain that.
Okay, and I would like to also point out that it's very similar on the warehouse as well, because everybody else is higher than the 70 cents with the one Placer County that has it exempt. And I know warehouse, I thought, was one of those, especially like with Amazon coming in, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
It's a little bit attractive for the warehousing in the Sacramento area. And we might have, and I think there's some potentials on the horizon right now for that warehouse to come in. So, yeah, I'm wondering about that 70 cents and why we're going so low.
So if you look at, I'm sorry, I don't have, on page 18 of our slide show, and let's.
But what does that show, Leanne? Sorry.
So essentially what you're
Wrong
looking at, that's our total fee comparison for warehouse. And we included two of our main areas, like you were mentioning Amazon, that's in Metro Air Park. Mather is another area where we have a lot of warehouse space. And I think what we were trying to do is, not only are we looking at just the housing fee, but we're also trying to look at our total fee stack. So when you look at that, Sacramento County is their total development fee comparison is $13 for Metro Air Park and Mather, where if you look at the other jurisdictions, we're a little bit higher than Sacramento. We're a little bit higher. We're higher than Rancho Cordova. We are less than Elk Grove. So I think that's what we were also considering.
It's interesting, just when you look at that one too,
Mhm.
the brown part is the housing fee.
Right.
And in those other three that you mentioned, it looks like it's a larger share of their total fee goes to the housing fee as opposed to what's going on with the county. Do I have that correct?
You do probably have that correct to some extent, because the county's fee structure, depending on where you're located in the county, some of the other fee costs are a little bit higher. Like the other development fee costs, like transportation, and some of those tend to be, can be higher depending on parts of the county that you're in. So, so it is possible, like if you're looking at City of Sacramento and Elk Grove, the brown part for them is a larger percentage of that.
Mhm.
But again, I think it was part of the county's consideration when we were trying to come up with a fee, is not only were we looking at what everybody's housing trust fund fee was, we were also looking at that total fee stack.
Okay. All right. Thank you so
If
much.
that kind of makes sense. And I'm sorry it took me so long to kind of get to that for you.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, thank you, Cecile. We'll go back to Commissioner Boyd. Barry, you're on.
Thank you there, Chair. Ms. Mueller,
Yes.
as you just asked Commissioner Nunley if the commission felt in a certain manner to include a want, if at this time I would like to give staff direction to include language that asks that the manufacturing costs, or excuse me, the manufacturing fee and the warehousing fee both be reflective of the immediate area and taking into reference our surrounding area, i.e. bringing it, let's say even within, I'm liberal, 10% plus or negative. For the liberal side, the 10% lower than the current surrounding, the closest surrounding area and areas of further out. So again, giving direction to bring forth or bring up that fee dramatically to reflect what is currently being collected, and to specifically point out in your bar graph that to highlight the actual fee of the warehousing and manufacturing, whatever it takes to embolden that small amount at the tip of your bar graph is actually that amount, and not do not consider the housing fee, excuse me. Don't leave it sort of vague to where one would think the housing fee is also included in that bar graph as a part of the warehousing and or manufacturing fee.
Commissioner Boyd, if I could just, as most help, you could just provide us comments. We don't, in this case, we don't need to be directed since it's a presentation, but I think for our we'd find it most useful. I think what you're saying is you'd like to see those two fees increased. And I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that's what you're asking, that you think they should be a higher level. If you have a specific dollar amount, that's fine too. But just for our sake, just a little, you're just asking for those fees to be increased, correct?
So the fees would be increased somewhere, let's go with 5 to 10% of what they are in the surrounding communities of us. So that increase would be reflective of within 10% of the fees that are currently in place to the areas that surround us, as Ms. Mueller had stated.
I think that we do not know all the fees surrounding us. We don't know Yolo County doesn't have a fee, or I think we did have some Placer, but El Dorado. But I think what I'm hearing you say in general, those fees should be increased.
increase reflective within 10% of the local areas which are included in the presentation,
Okay.
which was El Grove, Sacramento, Placer, West Sacramento.
Okay.
I got it.
And
Sorry, I
fantastic.
understand what you're saying. So basically for warehouse and manufacturing, you would say to increase them within 10% of kind of the total, what if we kind of tried to capture what the total fee was in the surrounding area. So definitely needs to be increased.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, are you saying the average of those? I guess
Because I was trying to figure out, and maybe we're getting too much into
yeah.
too finite of detail, but I was just looking, you know, Placer County at the highest is $2 and Elk Grove at the lowest is 88 cents, right? So, and then like Folsom and Sacramento are both around $1.73, right? So I was, in my mind, I'm trying to figure out what would be, because you've got somebody that's lower and then you've got three that are higher, obviously. So, and they never get up, and the highest is $2 and then there's $1.73, right? So if we went to $2, I think we would be matching Placer County, but we'd be obviously higher than Sacramento and Folsom. So that's why I was maybe kind of initially thinking averaging.
You are correct in that, and I'm sorry for not putting a finer point on it in without placing a dollar amount on it, but the liberal side again within say 10% of the average of from low to high.
Okay.
That still gives a lot of breathing room.
Yeah, and I think we can, so yeah, so I'm hearing that obviously higher for warehouse and manufacturing is the recommendation of the commission.
Well,
yes.
Let me just say, I haven't jumped into this conversation, but I guess I want to understand what the skinny is here. Is there, Barry, is there something that you're afraid of? Is there an inequity issue, or is there something that, bring us in on that? You know, if there's something that you're seeing that we're missing.
I won't say an inequity issue at this juncture. What I'm seeing is opportunity for financial opportunity to further financial opportunity for gap funding for other projects that SHRA may come across down the line if needed, by simply increasing the manufacturing and warehousing fee, to which would bring us in play with the close surrounding areas. So by bringing our fee up, we will still, by using an average, still hit lower than most. And so the look of coming to Sacramento County would still be great to place business there. But, and then part B of that, to your question, Sam, again, what I'm seeing, maybe no one else does, again, the big business led cannabis industry, where it looks like a great financial break is being offered by coming into Sacramento County, if our fees are that drastically low, to where that 26 cents and the 61 cents are so low, it's why go anywhere else? And like any other business, if you're a business, well, you should pay what everybody else pays.
I think I see. No, that's a good catch. So Michelle's staff, and this is not anybody directing anybody. This is us, you guys educating us. And is that, you know how, and Barry, correct me if I'm wrong, is this the idea that structurally municipalities could really attract certain businesses to certain areas by making them so, by making it so lucrative, so so low? Is that, the idea that other cities, the numbers are a little higher, here they're a little lower, and that thus would attract certain businesses to this area because of it so low? Is that the idea, Barry? Or am I missing that?
No, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Just using a quick analogy, let's say if a developer wants to build a multi-unit property that's low income, that developer could qualify for a state benefit and incentive bonus, which i.e. means a great reduction of their costs because they're offering at least the state minimum of 10% low income housing. So this, using that as an analogy, so if I'm gonna build a new apartment complex, and my thought is that to build it at market rate or above market rate, but hey, if I include at least 10% of below market rate units, I can qualify for a discount on my cost that will come from the state of California. So using that analogy with the manufacturing and warehousing in the agri business, that is, it seems to, again, my opinion, is what is being offered here as, hey, we are so low, we're practically giving it away in the aspect of, in comparison to our counterparts locally, if that answered your question.
This is a point of clarity, Commissioner Boyd. In the example you just gave about housing, was that a hypothetical to illustrate the point? I just want to make sure. Okay, because that does not exist right now for multifamily, but I think I hear what you're saying is that you're trying to create an incentive if you keep it low for those businesses to come to the county. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So then just to then further clarify, within the staff's recommendations for the county, it has manufacturing, their recommendation is $1, and for warehouse is 70 cents. And are you saying that those are the two areas that you think should be higher?
Yes, reflective of bringing it, those numbers to within 10% of the average. Hold on, let me just do my math real quick. 81, 2, so it's still going to be.
Barry, would it be competitive, Barry? Would you allow staff to, if your words, I'm not putting anything in your mind here, would competitive numbers be, thus staff could, if it, make those numbers a bit more competitive? If that, I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but I'm just trying to, none of us that we should bring our calculators here tonight, but I'm just, this is just the idea that if we can make those numbers competitive, that might help give staff latitude, and at the same time give them a sense of where we might be going with this, maybe? I don't know.
I thought that I was clear on that, and I thought Ms. Mueller was clear on that same explanation, to which, as you just stated, yes.
I think what I'm understanding of the commission is that manufacturing and warehousing should be higher, but as to both your point, Mr. Boyd, and your point, Mr. Starks, but to be higher because you feel they're too low, but still be at a point where they are competitive with the surrounding area, which is why in your methodology, Commissioner Boyd, you're suggesting averaging and then taking within 10%.
Correct.
So realistically, my really quick back of the envelope numbers is that it might be for warehousing, I'm sorry, for manufacturing, it might be more advantageous that you guys would recommend, or that it would be somewhat in your methodology, it would be somewhat closer to the index for cost increases, I think is where where that's, in my do quick math, where it's kind of landing. And then for warehouse, not to put too fine of a point on it, but we're probably, because one of them is exempt and such, I think we're probably looking at around 80 something cents. So it would still be under $1.
Yeah.
If I could just, I'm sorry, Commissioner, if I could just add from a staff's perspective, I think the fees that were established in 1992, if they had been indexed, I think they would be very competitive with what the city charges now, some of the other jurisdictions. They were not indexed, so they have not increased automatically annually. So I do think that that would be something to strive for. As Leanne's saying, it sounds like it just happens to be in, what did you say, the manufacturing would end up back at the indexed amount?
It would be pretty close to the
Yeah, I do think that that's sort of something the commission should keep in mind, that amount, that indexed amount.
Right, which is the $1.50, because the index amount would be $1.51, which is why I said the $1.50 in the first place, but
right.
And then the other one, 88 cents, that sounds reasonable to me, but yes, something, we still want to be competitive, but at the same time, it seems as though that there was leeway that those two could be increased. And I think I would have made a motion, and I think most of the commissioners are thinking maybe those could be just a little bit higher.
Okay. All right. What staff can do is take that on to the board, the SHRA's commission in having this workshop, that you felt that the fees that staff was suggesting for manufacturing and warehousing were too low. And you would recommend something higher, closer, at least for manufacturing, to what the indexed amount would be, and then even higher than the indexed amount for warehouse, something, because we're having 70, but probably a good 10 cents higher.
So I see that Daryl has his hand up, and I did want to comment myself also. It would seem like in any event, we don't want to be the highest or the lowest in the neighborhood. So a happy medium is always, when you're looking at finances and fees to make something fit into the general neighborhood. How do you compare with your neighbors? Being the average and general mark sometimes makes everybody compare to you, which might be a good thing. Daryl, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Are all the jurisdictions around going to index their fees, or are we the only one? Because that will make a difference as to Barry's calculations.
Correct. But I believe that as of right now, I want to say that Sacramento does currently index theirs,
Yes.
and we are asking to index ours. And then I know for sure that Rancho Cordova and Citrus Heights, they still use the county's ordinance because they incorporated from the county. But I also know that Citrus Heights is looking at updating theirs. So, and I would be making an assumption, but if I was staff to Citrus Heights, I would be index that thing.
Yes, all the local fees that SHRA administers. And I think there are 4, well, besides this one, are all indexed.
Did that answer everybody's questions? Okay, Lyra, are there any public comments on this item?
None at this time.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, can you give us just the final on what we decided after all that wonderful conversation?
Well, we have no vote on the item, but in general, I think that staff has heard our comments and we've been on both sides of the center line. So I'm not going to try to sum up everybody's feelings because I'll be wrong.
From
Leanne
those,
can give a summary.
yeah, from those that spoke, I believe that manufacturing and warehousing, the commission felt was too low. Manufacturing, you would like it to be closer to the indexed amount, and then warehousing, you would like to be higher than what staff is currently recommending at 70 cents, but somewhere closer to the average of the fees for the city of Sacramento, city of Folsom, and city of Elk Grove.
Because this is not an action item, we will say that, this is, some of the comments we heard from some of the commissioners at the meeting where this was presented.
Yes.
All right. I see a couple of affirmatives to that. So thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to the next presentation then.
Thank you for your time, commissioners.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you, Leanne.
The next one is the SHRA presentation.
So we have Mary Liz Paulson will be giving this presentation. It'll be an update of our program in terms of where we are.
Good afternoon, commissioners. So glad to be back again, and I'll give you an update on the SHRA program. I presented before, so I think you all know that the SHRA program is the Sacramento Emergency Rental Assistance Program. The funds are available for families that are unable to pay rent and utilities due to the pandemic, due to COVID. So we're going to start off looking at how we're doing as far as dispersing the funds. So I have a chart here. You've seen different iterations of this before. Basically, the city and the county have both contracted with SHRA to administer the SHRA program. There are 4 different pots of funds, so 4 different sources. The city and the county both get funds separately from the feds directly, from the U.S. Treasury Department, and from the state. So we're going to walk through just one row for a minute. You can see for the city federal, they received $13.7 million, and we have currently expended $13.4 million, or 98% of the funds available for disbursement. So if you follow each line, you can see how each pot of funds is being spent and where we're at with that. When we look at the total of the 96.9, almost $97 million that we have available, we've expended 72 million, or 75% of the total. We are approaching about 10,000 families that are receiving assistance. And when we look at how the families are divided between the city and the county, about 60% of the families that are getting assisted are in the county jurisdiction and 40% from the city. The families are receiving an average of about $7,400 each. So that's rent and utilities. And when we talk about utilities, that's gas, electric, water, sewer, trash, and internet. So it could be some or all of those also. I want to take a pause for just a minute. I have a couple staff who are on the Zoom call also, and I want to introduce Mivi No and Tanya Cruz. Tanya is a program manager with me on the SHRA program, and Mivi is a supervisor. So these are amazing, amazing numbers. And the program just started. We issued our first checks in April. So to get from April to November dispersing this amount of money has really taken a lot of commitment, dedication, hard work. And I really want to acknowledge and thank Tanya and Mivi for that. So you see them here, so thank you. So moving on we'll talk a little bit about the applications that we've received. So we started in February, we were open for about a month there, about 3 weeks actually, and received just over 12,000 applications. We closed, started processing those, disbursing funds, and then reopened in May and have remained open since. So you can still apply for rental assistance. And contrary to thought, once the eviction moratorium lifted, the SHRA program did not go away. The applications did not close. People can still apply. There are still funds available. And you can see we received almost as much in the number of applications since May as we did prior to May. And we'll talk a little bit more about how they're coming in a little bit further. So we have been able to assist families and get the word out through our partnership with our 14 different community-based organizations. You've heard about them before. Some of the examples of the community-based organizations we're working with are Asian Resources, La Familia, and the California Black Chamber of Commerce. So they are assisting families in applying and then following up when families need to submit information. If there's families that are having a hard time uploading the documents, then we've got 14 partners throughout the city and the county that can assist with that. Next, I want to show you some information, well, actually about the applications, and then we'll look into some information about the applicants. This is interesting. It showed very different on mine. So you have the, well, we'll go through. There are 3 ways that an applicant can submit their application for assistance. Either the tenant can apply directly, and then they fill out the information. We determine them eligible. Then we reach out to the landlord. They give us some additional information. The application goes forward and we can make a decision about disbursement or eligibility. So that's one way. And based on the pie graph, that represents the blue area, which is the largest percentage. That's the largest path to getting an application submitted. And actually 86% of our applications come in that route. Or we also find that landlords submit an application, and the landlord can initiate the application, then it goes to the tenant. We still need tenant information. So no party, and actually it's written in the law, no one party, the tenant or the landlord, can submit the application in its entirety on their own. The application has to come in and be represented and supported by both parties. So the landlord can initiate the application, then the application is submitted to the tenant, and the tenant fills out information. It goes back to the landlord for confirmation and decision. And 11% of our applications come in with the landlord initiating. And then we also mentioned the community-based organizations that we work with. They can assist either the landlord or the tenant in submitting the application. And 3% of the applications have come in with the CBO participating. So let's look at, see some information about who is submitting applications. Here's some information by race, and we've separated out city and county. If this is something that you are interested in and you want to know more, if you go to our website at shra.org/SHRA, you'll see that we have this information and more that we produce and publish on a monthly basis. And it's available there. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll see monthly reports, including October's report is there now. So we've talked about targeting different communities, and we're working with the CBOs to do that, the community-based organizations. Oh, I'm sorry, skip this one. This is ethnicity. And then here is, you can see where the different groups are, or the different applications are coming from. The orange groups we've talked about before are those communities that have had a disparate impact from COVID. So those are areas that we're targeting. And these are the zip codes that have the most applications coming from them. And so we will continue to strive to get more involvement from some of those orange zip codes to the right of the graph, but you can tell that we feel like we are achieving our goals, that we do have the orange groups represented in the top half. I want to talk about evictions now. I mentioned quickly earlier that the eviction moratorium lifted at the end of September, on September 30th. And so there was a lot of concern about how many evictions would actually start taking place immediately after that. We have been working with the Sacramento County courts, and they were gearing up for just an onslaught of landlords who were submitting applications for evictions or starting the court process. Prior to September 30th, we were receiving less than 1,000 and averaging about 900 new applications each month. However, from October 1st to current, we've received over 6,000 applications from renters. We started asking the first week of October, we added a question to the application asking if the applicant was at risk of being evicted. And specifically, we wanted to know if they had received documentation from their landlord that would start the eviction process, an unlawful detainer, or we have a list of documents. And if they have received that, we ask them to upload those documents to us. So currently, we have just over 2,800 households that are saying that, yes, they are under eviction. So this caused us to stop and reevaluate who the priorities are that we are serving. So prior to September 30th, and again, in my presentations, I think you may remember it was based primarily on income. So those with the lowest income were the ones that were thought to be most vulnerable, and those that came to the top. And then as people needed help paying arrears, then those were a preference, a priority, as opposed to those who were higher income or who did not owe past rent due, but were looking for assistance paying future rent. So with the numbers of families who were under eviction, we said, you know, we need to put the brakes on and really look at helping these families first. The purpose of the SHRA program is to prevent homelessness and to serve those who are at risk of losing their housing. So we are working now to provide assistance to those first, to those families under eviction. We are working with the court. So before a case goes to eviction, the court calls us as it's scheduled, checks on the status of the SHRA application, and then it's up to the judge. He or she has delayed making a decision until the SHRA application is processed and a decision is made. So that you'll be hearing more about that, but that has become our focus. You saw on the first slides how much money we have available for disbursement, but I also want to say there's another round of funding that is coming that will be available when the $97 million is expended. So we are not close to using all of the funds. There is more help, more funding available. And these funds can be utilized until September of 2025. So there is not an issue of trying to expend or run out of it before the deadline. We have time to be able to assist those families that need it. When we look at who is benefiting from the SHRA program, we've highlighted in the past some of our applicants, our tenants who have received assistance. And I really would like to, at every opportunity I can, give folks an opportunity to speak out here. However, I was talking to a few tenants who were not able to attend today, but in talking to them, I'm bringing their words to you on their behalf. So one lady I talked to was saying the process was so easy that it was not a problem. And even though it's all online and we're working through emails and so on, she did not feel that that was a struggle or a problem. I asked her where she would be without the SHRA assistance, and she said immediately, without a moment's hesitation, I would be evicted. So our goal of keeping people housed is achieved, at least with her. So we know that she, and I'm sure she's speaking on behalf of many of the other of the 10,000 households that were able to continue being housed. Another lady I spoke with today was saying that she, and I know her actually, that she had a history of being homeless. She has been housed now for 7 years, and she lost her income source and was really, really afraid of having to go back on the street. She's been there before and knew what it was like. She felt that she asked lots and lots of questions, but was so thankful for the staff that was patient and working with her. The next slide I want to introduce is really giving you the other perspective. We haven't really talked about the landlords and the landlords who are receiving the rental assistance on behalf of the tenants who are not able to pay rent. And I really wanted to reach out and to bring landlords who are not the corporate landlords, but those who have a house that they are renting out as another source of income or a livelihood. And when their tenant can't pay rent, we know that in many cases that affects their ability to pay the mortgage. And so that was really the focus. And I reached out to a couple of landlords. And again, this gentleman really wanted to be here tonight. He was having some medical issues and needed to see the doctor. But I asked him in particular, I could tell from his voice that he was an older gentleman, and I asked him how he found the online program, and he said it was pretty smooth, it was easy, that he had no problems. He thought this was a very big help, a great help financially. Was another woman I spoke with who was a landlord, and she really spoke from personal experience. She said that she had been a single mom. She worked during the day. She went to school at night. She really struggled to keep housing for herself and recognized the importance of the housing and really wanted to be in a place where she could provide good quality housing for someone who really needed it. She found that she was having a hard time with the lack of receiving rent, maintaining her unit, so that she was using her credit cards to pay for the maintenance that was necessary. And she was incurring late fees on her credit cards, incurring interest, and was having a really hard time maintaining the unit for the family that she was trying to help. And so when she got the rental assistance on behalf of the tenant who was not able to pay, she felt she was able to maintain the unit in a way that she really wanted to do. So I thought those were really relevant perspectives, but we were missing the corporate landlords. So I've been working with Josh Kirk from Chesapeake Commons and spoke with him and asked him some of the same questions about what his experience was in working with the SHRA program and how this has impacted him and his ability to run his business. And thank you, Josh, so much for sitting through this long meeting so far. I really appreciate your being present and willing to participate. And so I'm going to let Josh fill you in and tell you what he was telling me today about the SHRA program, his perspective.
Well, I appreciate you guys for having me. This is my first forum, so thank you for having me. One of the things that we struggled with was the pandemic is just the people not being able to pay rent. And the SHRA program has been awesome. I mean, I don't know if we would have made it through this without it. And it not only helps us pay our mortgage and our property taxes and our insurance and bills and things like that, but keeping the apartments in habitable condition is another thing we faced when we had the last storm. Obviously, the winds and the rains, they wreak havoc on, buildings that could be older. But this income coming in allowed us to keep the apartments, running. We were able to order supplies of things like washing machines, dishwashers, and microwaves, some of which we struggled 3-6 months on back order. So when those funds come in and kind of help offset the loss in rent, we're still able to have these items on hand to make sure that the residents, their homes are in habitable condition. One of the biggest things for me is that, having money come in, we've actually been able to hire anywhere from like maybe a half dozen just at this one property of residents. So the owner that I work for sent out anything from a groundskeeper to a porter to a maintenance technician to a leasing agent. They were just conventional residents that applied here and lived here at Chesapeake Commons, and now they're actually employees of the company. And I'm not sure if that money was unavailable, if we would be able to extend that offer to these people. We've got quite a few people right now. I've got a total of 600 units that I have here in Rancho. And I'd say about 1 out of 6 of them were in risk of eviction or something similar to that. I'm happy to say that with the help extending it into October, those numbers have significantly dropped. And the stress and the communication that I hear when I talk to the residents daily, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There was a lot of questions that I couldn't answer, but working with Mary Liz and her staff has made it a lot easier. So I don't know if you guys have any questions for me personally, but that's kind of my experience from the corporate end of what's going on here in Sacramento.
Thank you very much, Josh. Can you talk
You're welcome.
When we were talking earlier, you were talking about your property's eviction rate, what it has been versus what it is now. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So I've been with the company. I was recruited a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, to come in and take over the property. In the first 2 years, out of 600 units, I had one eviction. Currently, I filed 34 evictions after the 3-day notice to pay or quit expired in the month of October. 7 of them I've been able to pull back because SHRA and the SHRA program has distributed funds that brought those people out of that homelessness risk, and the evictions were removed. But we still have about 27 people right now that we're waiting to see how the application process goes, and it's the numbers have spiked significantly. I've always prided myself on working. We own the property. We're not a middleman, of working with people, trying to find different things. I've been in, how do I say it? I've done a lot of community service in my life. My family helped Father Dan Madigan open the Sacramento Food Bank in Oak Park in around 1980. I've been active on the board for the Run to Feed the Hungry for 20 years. And this is unlike anything I've ever seen. And it's scary.
Thank you. Thank you. So
you're welcome.
So based on what Josh is saying, you can tell we're going to be busy. So Tanya and Mevi and their team are working really hard to help Josh's residents and others. So we'll help get through this eviction crisis and the pandemic and the challenges it's brought forward. So
are there any commissioners who have any questions for Josh?
Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, bully for all you guys. The great work you're doing. Thank you for this hard work in these very troubled times. SMUD, you guys have been a kind of a lifesaver. Mary Liz and her team just kind of allowing us to take those funds and just kind of turn them around and keep people's power on. But the first issue is a place to live, a place to have a home. You hear sometimes about the, and I'm seeking your feedback here. The temporary nature of the funds, or is this a really kind of a second chance? Some people get so far behind that there's like no way to catch up. But if they could catch up, then they would be fine because they do have some kind of means to continue to pay moving forward. Maybe Josh can speak to this. Is that your sense that maybe they get 3 months behind and having the CR2 program funds initially helps them, maybe or Tanya as well, but then once they get caught up, are they okay, or will we see them again? So I'll take that offline.
I honestly think that a lot of people have fallen into a rut. And I think that, and I do believe that if you can help them, give them a hand up and get them back on track, business is starting to pick up from what I see across the board. People are starting to get gainful employment. EDD is working to get some of the past due funds that were awarded to our residents. I just spoke with a lady earlier. Her husband has been going back and forth with EDD since March, and it's been a struggle. So they worked and got the application in and got them to a point where there's still money owed. And if we can get them to a little bit ahead of it, we can get them out there, and then they can, kind of get them out of the rut and bring them out into the flatland so that they can start to pick up momentum financially and get back on their feet. And I do believe that once we get them going, one of the things I'm really proud of is 2 Februaries ago, we were at a true zero delinquency. Every single dollar was collected, 600 units. And then when COVID hit, it all went downhill. And what that leads me to believe is, you know, the guy that handles the financials is that most of these people don't want to be in this situation. It's just something that cards were dealt to them. Their jobs cut back hours. Their children weren't able to go to school. So one of the 2 breadwinners in the house had to quit. So they took a 50% hit on their income. And it's just a struggle. I think this helping hand to get them up and out of the trenches will get them moving. And I don't think that we'll see them coming back once we can get them moving forward.
All right. Any other questions? I'm going to throw one out there at you, Josh.
Yes, sir.
I understand the SHRA program doesn't pay 100% of what the rent would have been, but it's sufficient for you guys.
No, it didn't. We do pay 100%.
They're paying 100%.
Yes.
Previously, I thought it was 80%, but.
You're right. It was 80% with Senate Bill 91, but it was revised. It was amended with AB 832 as of June 30th. So since June, we were able to pay 100%, and we were able to go back and pay that 20% that landlords missed out on. So landlords are now whole.
Okay.
One other thing I'd like to throw in there is when they did that, the feedback and the ability for me to actually open those lines of communication 180 degrees. You know, when they still thought that they had money that they had to pay, when they changed those rules and they were like, hey, listen, I've qualified, I've proven that I'm entitled or eligible for these funds, the response for my phone calls, emails, knocking on doors and talking to people, it was night and day difference. So that made a huge difference for us because people were like, okay, hey, I can get back on my feet.
Cool. Well, the main thing is we want people like you to keep renting to people that need places to live. That's
how I keep my job.
Yeah. But the bottom line is having places for people to live, not have places be boarded up and abandoned. So
absolutely.
Excellent.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
All right.
Good. So just a reminder, if you're interested in more just as a reminder, if you're interested in more information or reports or to see how the application works, all of that information is on our website. So we try and provide updated information there, including our reports. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Go ahead, Barry, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do have, let me extend to Mr. Kirk, a corporate entity that works well with those that he's in charge of in regards to his property. Fantastic job you guys did, Joshua, working with the fantastic job that SHRA has done. Fantastic, appreciate it. I'm not certain, but if we are done with Mr. Kirk, we may want to say thank you and good night so he doesn't have to hang around any longer unless he wishes to.
Yeah, I'm going to do a little OT. I might have some questions tomorrow, but if anybody has any other questions, if you could let me go, that'd be awesome. I don't want to have a talk tomorrow from the employers.
Thank
Is
you,
everybody
Jack.
good?
Have them call me if there's a question.
All right, well, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. That was outstanding. If you have any questions, Mary Liz has got all my contact info. Please feel free to email me or call me anytime.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you.
All right, bud.
All right, thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night. Mary Lynn, I do have one question. As you had stated, there's, we still have a window of money. Excuse me, that didn't sound right. We still have money to dispense. What is the next funding amount of money that's coming down the pike, as you stated?
It is actually, it's the same. So here are the dollars. It's a continuation of the same program. There are very few and they're minor changes, but it's the same kind of assistance that's available. So anybody who's applying will not notice a difference. It'll be seamless and we'll go forward.
Okay, so maybe I'm missing it. So once the total of the $99 million has been used, now you said there was more funding coming, correct? On
And
top of that
that's
99 million?
That's correct. And that's what the chart at the bottom of this page shows, that after the 99 million is expended, we have $84 million additional that we can continue to expend. So yes.
I did miss it. I thought the bottom total was the working numbers that you guys have now, and then as a part of the 99 million, and then waiting for additional funds. Never mind. Thank you very much.
Good.
All right, any other questions for Mary Liz? Well, thank you very much. That'll take us on to the Executive Director's report.
So I just really wanted to say a great big thank you to Mary Liz and to Tanya and Mimi. They have done an absolutely incredible job. It is unbelievable that we've been able to set up an entirely new program and disperse the amount of money that we have in the period of time that we have been working on this. And they just do. They work tirelessly and they do such a great job. I just can't thank them enough. I was on a national call and they were talking about the low distribution rate across the country of these funds. And the average distribution rate was 11%. So you can see that SHRA is, so far beyond what the average is, because, well, we never hang out or think we're the average anyway, but they are just fantastic and they do a great job. And I just really want to acknowledge a lot of their hard work. I call Mary Liz all the time about, hey, Mary Liz, I'm hearing from this person or that, and they jump right on it and make sure that people get the assistance that they need. And I really appreciate it. And thank you guys both for all your hard work.
Respect.
Yes, absolutely. And then the other thing that I just had was regarding our next commission meeting, which I'm just stunned that we're talking about the last commission meeting of the year. It seems like we were just going into 2021 and we're so hopeful that it was not going to be like the previous year, and it wasn't. But our last commission meeting is scheduled for December 1st at 4 o'clock, and we will see you then.
All right. So for the chair's report, I've got a little bit of thought-provoking information for everybody. So January we have elections for chair of the commission. So if anybody's interested, start thinking about that. Start considering tackling that. 3 years in a row is more than anybody else has done. So feel free to jump in there.
Well, 4 years. 4 years.
Set the bar so high nobody can ascertain it.
4 years. 4 years.
You guys need to think. So, anyway, I'm giving you enough warning. You can be prepared and consider it and see what you could do better than I have done. So, just throwing that out there. So that's the only thing I had. That takes us to items and questions of commissioners, which would include marriage announcements and baby announcements and all that. Come on, nobody has anything? Cecile had to leave for a meeting, if that's worth anything. All right.
I think Daryl had something to say.
I have to run too, so.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to say.
All right. Well, I don't see any hands up, so the next thing says adjournment of regular commission meeting.
All right.
With that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
So